Welcome to Glisso English. Real life stories.
Have you ever been the only one working while everyone else is out having fun? Imagine this. It is 2 a.m. You're staring at a computer screen finishing a massive group project by yourself. Meanwhile, your teammates are posting photos from a party, laughing and enjoying their night. You are exhausted, you're angry, and you're about to make a choice that will change everything. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into the story called The Group Project Wait. It's a story about academic pressure, social betrayal, and the moment one student finally says, "Enough is enough." Are you ready? Let's see what happens when the martyr of the group finally decides to report the truth to the professor. Let's get started. Meet Silas. Silas is a third-year student who believes in hard work and clear communication. When the Global Economics Group project was assigned, he was actually optimistic. He sat down with his three teammates, Leo, Sarah, and Chloe, to divide the tasks fairly. "I can handle the data analysis," Silas suggested, pointing to the complex charts in the syllabus. The others nodded quickly, their eyes darting to their phones as notifications buzzed incessantly. "I'll do the introduction," Leo shouted, already halfway out the door to meet friends for lunch. Sarah and Chloe promised to handle the case studies and the final formatting by Friday. Silas felt a small knot of worry in his stomach, but he pushed it down, wanting to trust them. By Wednesday, Silas had finished his entire section, totaling 10 pages of deep research. He opened the shared digital document to see how the others were progressing. The screen was blindingly white. The cursor blinked on an empty page like a mocking heartbeat. He sent a polite message to the group chat, "Hey guys, just checking in on the progress." Silence followed for 4 hours until a single thumbs-up emoji appeared from Sarah. Later that night, Silas saw an Instagram story of the three of them at a local club. They were shouting over loud music, holding drinks high, and laughing about living their best lives. Silas looked back at his notes, then at the empty document, and finally at the clock. It was 11 p.m., and the first major deadline was only 12 hours away. The weight of the project began to settle firmly onto his shoulders. He realized that if this work was going to get done, he was the only one who would do it. He sighed, opened a fresh energy drink, and started typing the introduction that Leo had forgotten. By Friday morning, the shared document was still a digital ghost town. Silas had spent the entire night writing the case studies that Sarah and Chloe had promised to finish. Every time he refreshed the page, he hoped to see another cursor moving, but he was always alone. He decided to call Leo, thinking perhaps a voice conversation would create more urgency. The phone rang until it hit voicemail, a cheerful recording of Leo saying he was out chasing vibes. Silas felt his patience thinning, a sharp contrast to the dull ache behind his tired eyes. He sent a second message. "The preliminary draft is due at noon. Is anyone uploading their part?" 20 minutes later, Chloe replied, "OMG, so sorry. My Wi-Fi has been totally spotty all morning." Then Sarah chimed in, "I'm at my cousin's wedding rehearsal. I literally can't get to my laptop." Silas looked at the edit history of the document. It was a long, lonely list of his own name. He was officially ghosted, a term he usually associated with dating, not academic survival. To save the group's grade, and his own, he stayed in the library through his lunch break. He polished the formatting and fixed the citations, doing the work of 4 people in the time of 1. Just as he submitted the draft to the university portal, his phone buzzed with a new notification. It was a photo in the group chat of a giant plate of nachos at a sports bar. "We owe you big time, Silas," Leo texted, followed by a series of party hat emojis. "We'll definitely pull our weight for the final submission next week, promise." Silas didn't reply.
He just stared at the screen, feeling more like an employee than a teammate. The ghosting phase had ended, but the real resentment was just beginning to take root. He closed his laptop slowly, wondering if their promise was worth the digital paper it was written on.
The weekend passed in a blur of silence, but Monday morning brought a new wave of anxiety. The final submission was worth 40% of their grade, and the requirements were grueling. Silas sat in the back of the library, surrounded by empty coffee cups and half-eaten snacks. He had messaged the group at 9 a.m. to set up a sprint session, but no one showed up. Leo sent a text at noon saying his car wouldn't start, while Sarah claimed she had a sudden migraine. Silas watched the cursor blink on page 25, realizing he was now drafting the conclusion. The technical terms felt like lead in his brain: macroeconomic stability and fiscal policy. Every hour he took a short walk around the library stacks just to keep his blood flowing. His roommates had stopped asking him to hang out, knowing he was stuck in the project cave. At 2 a.m., the library lights flickered, a silent warning that the building would soon close. Silas opened his social media one last time before locking his phone for the night. There they were, Leo, Sarah, and Chloe, tagged in a post at a late-night pizza parlor. They looked energetic and happy, a sharp contrast to Silas's pale face and messy hair. Chloe was holding a slice of pepperoni pizza like a trophy, captioning it, "Stress-free nights." Silas felt a hot surge of anger boil beneath his exhaustion, making his hands shake slightly. He wasn't just doing the work anymore. He was subsidizing their social lives with his labor. He looked at the pizza in the photo and then at the cold, crusty slice sitting on his desk. This was the midnight oil phase, where the physical toll began to turn into emotional bitterness. He saved the file under a new name, Final Project, Silas Only, Draft. He knew he was reaching a breaking point, and the group had no idea how close it was. Thursday arrived, and the final deadline was now a mere 48 hours away. Silas decided to send one final, clear warning to the group chat to give them a chance to fix things. "Guys, I have finished 70% of the total project. I still need your sections on market trends." He waited. He watched the scene icons appear one by one at the bottom of the message. For an hour, the 3 dots of someone typing appeared and disappeared, but no text ever arrived. Finally, Leo replied, "Hey man, chill out. We're all super stressed. I'll get to it tonight, I swear." Silas knew tonight usually meant never in Leo's vocabulary, so he pushed for a specific time. "I need it by 6 p.m. tonight or I won't have time to merge it into the final document," Silas wrote. Sarah jumped in next. "I'm having a major crisis with my Wi-Fi. I think the router actually melted." Chloe added, "And I thought you said you were doing the trends part? I totally misunderstood the plan." Silas scrolled back to the very first chat from 2 weeks ago, where the roles were clearly assigned. He took a screenshot of that message and posted it back into the chat without a single word. The chat went dead silent for 3 hours as the group realized their excuses had been debunked. Silas wasn't being mean, he was being desperate, trying to keep the sinking ship afloat. He felt like a parent chasing toddlers, constantly reminding them of their basic responsibilities. At 7 p.m., the market trends section was still missing, and his warning had been ignored. He realized that they weren't struggling with the work, they simply didn't care because they had him. They viewed Silas as a safety net, a machine that produced grades while they produced memories. The knot in his stomach tightened into a hard, cold ball of resolve as he looked at the clack. This was the final warning, and the group had just failed their last test of character. By Friday morning, the project was 95% complete, but Silas felt zero satisfaction. He had spent the early hours of the morning writing the market trends section himself. Every sentence he typed felt like a heavy stone being added to a wall between him and his friends. At 10 a.m., the finished draft was finally sitting on his desktop, polished and professional. Suddenly, his phone buzzed with a rare notification from the shared document app. Leo had finally logged in, followed closely by Sarah and Chloe. Silas watched their colored icons hover at the top of the screen like vultures over a meal. "Whoa, Silas, this looks incredible," Leo messaged, finally breaking the long silence. "You really went above and beyond," Chloe added. "It's practically ready to submit." Then came the question Silas had been dreading. "Can we just check the title slide real quick?" Sarah started typing. "Make sure my name is spelled with an H at the end, please." Silas watched as they began to format their names in bold gold lettering at the very top of his work. They hadn't contributed a single citation, but they were very concerned about the font size of their names. "I'll just add a few fluff sentences to the intro so I can say I helped," Leo suggested. He typed 2 sentences of rambling, grammatically incorrect text that actually lowered the quality of the paper. Silas deleted the sentences immediately, his heart pounding with a mix of anger and disbelief. They were treating his 2 weeks of agony as a convenient service he had provided for free. "We make such a great team," Sarah texted, followed by a high-five emoji that felt like a slap. Silas didn't hit the finished button. He just sat there, looking at those 4 names on the cover. The finished draft was ready, but Silas knew the real work, the hardest part, was yet to come. It was 3 a.m. on the final night, and Silas was performing a final, meticulous proofread. His eyes were bloodshot, and the blue light of the monitor felt like it was burning into his brain. Suddenly, his phone vibrated across the wooden desk with a series of aggressive pings. He picked it up and saw a video notification from the group chat, sent by a very energetic Leo. Silas opened it to find a shaky, handheld video of a crowded, strobe-lit basement party. The bass was so loud the audio was distorted, but he could clearly hear his teammates screaming. "Cheers to the best group in class," Leo yelled into the camera, holding up a plastic cup. Sarah and Chloe appeared in the frame, dancing and shouting, "We finished! We're done!" They were celebrating the completion of a project they hadn't actually touched in 7 days. Another video followed, a pocket dial-style recording that captured their conversation over the music. "Silas is such a nerd, but honestly, he's a lifesaver," he heard Sarah's muffled voice say. "I knew if we just waited long enough, he'd do the whole thing," Chloe replied with a giggle. Silas sat in the deafening silence of his room, the audio from the party looping in his ears. He wasn't just a teammate to them, he was a tool to be used and then mocked behind his back. The betrayal felt sharper than the exhaustion, cutting through his fatigue like a cold blade. He looked at the edit history one more time, seeing his name listed for 99% of the activity. While he was sacrificing his sleep and health, they were using his labor to fund their freedom. The party at 3 a.m. was meant to be their victory lap, but for Silas, it was a wake-up call. He didn't feel angry anymore. He felt a strange, icy calm spreading through his chest. He slowly put his phone face down on the desk and reached for the professor's contact info. Silas stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in his wide, tired eyes. He opened the Version History tab, a hidden record of every single keystroke made. The data was undeniable, a long vertical column of his name in bright green. Silas, 412 edits. Leo, 2 edits. Sarah, 0 edits. Chloe, 0 edits. The 2 edits from Leo were just him fixing the spelling of his own name. Silas felt a strange, cold clarity washing away the fog of his exhaustion. He wasn't just tired anymore, he was seeing the situation with mathematical precision. He scrolled through the weeks of timestamps, seeing his own name active at 4 a.m. While he was building the foundation of their future careers, they were building memories. He realized that by staying silent, he was actually helping them become better liars. If they passed this class without working, they would do the same thing in a real job. The weight he had been carrying suddenly felt like something he could simply put down. He took a deep breath, the air in the quiet room feeling sharp and fresh. He began taking screenshots of the edit logs, saving them into a folder titled Evidence. He captured the group chat logs where his pleas for help were met with party photos. He didn't feel like a victim anymore. He felt like a witness to a crime of integrity. This was the moment of clarity, where the fear of being mean finally vanished. He looked at the Submit button on the student portal, but his mouse didn't move there. Instead, he opened a blank email draft and typed the name, Professor Sterling. The decision was made. Silas was done carrying a weight that wasn't his to bear.
The clock on the wall ticked toward 4 a.m., the only sound in the silent dorm room. Silas sat with his fingers hovering over the keyboard, his heart hammering against his ribs. This was the point of no return, the bridge he was about to burn behind him. He began the email with a formal tone. "Dear Professor Sterling, I am writing to you today." He didn't use emotional language. He stuck strictly to the cold, hard facts of the case. "Please find attached the final project draft, which I have completed in its entirety." He paused, then added, "I have also attached the edit history and communication logs." Silas explained that despite multiple warnings, his teammates had contributed 0%. He attached the folder of screenshots he had meticulously gathered over the last 2 weeks. He saw the party video still sitting in his downloads folder and added it as well. "I am requesting that my grade be evaluated separately based on my individual contribution." He read the email 3 times, checking for any hint of spite or unnecessary anger. It was a professional document of a student who had been pushed to his absolute limit. Silas looked at the send button, a blue rectangle that felt like a heavy stone. He thought about Leo's laugh, Sarah's excuses, and Chloe's mocking "best lives" caption. With a single, firm click of the mouse, the email vanished into the digital void. A notification appeared instantly, message sent, followed by a wave of sudden, dizzying relief. The weight didn't disappear, but for the first time in weeks, Silas didn't feel alone. He closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling in the dark. The email to Professor Sterling was done, and the morning would bring a very different reality.
The morning sun hit the classroom windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Silas sat in the front row, his laptop open, his expression a mask of professional calm. Leo, Sarah, and Chloe walked in late, smelling faintly of expensive cologne and stale pizza. They slumped into the chairs next to Silas, whispering with a confidence they hadn't earned. "Hey, Silas, did you hit submit?" Leo whispered, leaning in with a conspiratorial grin. "The project is in," Silas replied shortly, not looking away from the front of the room. "Perfect. We'll just wing the talking parts during the presentation," Sarah added. "I'll handle the introduction since I wrote it," Leo said, winking at Chloe. Professor Sterling entered the room carrying a stack of papers and a very serious expression. He didn't start the lecture. He just stood at the podium and looked directly at their group. "Before we begin today's presentations, I have some administrative updates," the professor said. He adjusted his glasses and looked at a printout that Silas recognized instantly.
I received an extensive digital audit of the group project contributions late last night. Silas felt the three people next to him freeze, their casual postures suddenly turning rigid. "Professor, we all worked super hard on that," Leo asked, leaning in with a conspiratorial grin. Professor Sterling didn't blink. "The metadata suggests otherwise, Mr. Leo. It suggests silence." Sarah and Chloe looked at Silas, their eyes wide with a mix of shock and growing fury. "Silas, did you—" Chloe started to whisper, her voice trembling with realization. "Group 4, please step out into the hallway," the professor commanded. "We need to talk."
The hallway was silent, except for the heavy thud of the classroom door closing behind them. Leo was the first to speak, his face turning a blotchy red as he cornered Silas. "Are you kidding me, man? You actually ratted us out over a stupid school project?" "I didn't rat you out," Silas replied, his voice surprisingly steady. "I just told the truth." Sarah stepped forward, her arms crossed tight. "We were going to help. We just had a busy week." "You had a busy month," Silas countered, "and I have the timestamps to prove exactly where you were." Professor Sterling stepped into the hallway, holding the printed edit logs like a legal indictment. "Silas, you may head back inside. Your individual grade has been recorded as an A+. As for the rest of you," the professor continued, his voice dropping an octave, "follow me to my office." Silas walked back into the classroom, feeling the collective gaze of 20 other students on him. He sat in his usual seat, but the weight that had crushed his chest for weeks was gone. He realized that being nice was not the same as being a doormat for someone else's laziness. An hour later, his phone blew up with angry texts from the group, calling him a traitor. He didn't feel the urge to explain himself or apologize. He simply hit the block button on all three. He looked at his clean, organized notebook and felt a sense of pride he hadn't felt in years. He had learned more about economics in those 2 weeks than he ever thought possible. But more importantly, he had learned the value of his own time and the necessity of boundaries. The weight was officially lifted, replaced by a solid foundation of self-respect. Silas gathered his things as the bell rang, walking out of the building into the bright afternoon sun. He wasn't just a student who finished a project, he was a man who had finally stood his ground.
The silence that followed Silas's decision was the loudest part of the whole journey. While Leo, Sarah, and Chloe faced the consequences of their social loafing, Silas walked away with more than just a high grade. He learned that productivity is not just about finishing a task, it's about accountability. Carrying the weight for others might seem like the nice thing to do, but in the end, it only prevents people from growing. Silas didn't just save his GPA, he saved his self-respect. And that concludes the story of the group project weight. It's a tough situation, but Silas showed us that standing up for your hard work is a vital life skill. In English, we often call this setting boundaries. Did Silas do the right thing, or was he too harsh? I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a group where someone didn't pull their weight? What did you do? Tell me your group project horror story in the comments below. I'll be hearting the most interesting stories. Don't forget to test what you've learned today. I have placed a vocabulary and comprehension quiz in the description box below. It's the best way to make sure these new English phrases actually stick in your memory. If you want to go back and review a specific part of the story, check the timestamps in the description. You can jump directly to the moment of clarity or the email to the professor to hear those sections again. If you enjoyed this story and want more real-life English lessons, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next story. Goodbye.